Good morning everyone and welcome to my video number 4. Today I'm going to show you how to install Home Assistant in a K3s cluster with a persistent volume. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that, using a load balancer service type and then using a ClusterIP service type with an ingress with a TLS certificate. But you can learn about that TLS certification on my previous video. I'll put the link in the description. So if you're gonna use the second way, you should check that out. Home Assistant, awaken your home. There's nice documentation for many platforms, but we're not gonna be needing any of those. So, all right. So as you can see, there's nothing currently in my Home Assistant namespace. I have all the YAML files here. You can find them in my GitHub. The link is in the description. But I always suggest you to create them from scratch to kind of learn how these YAMLs work. It feels kind of rewarding to be able to do them too. In the end, they're really simple and Kubernetes documentation is really good help with that. Let's start this off by creating the PersistentVolumeClaim. We're going to use storage class name local path. This is K3 as default. It will provision volume from the node's local storage. It is great for single node clusters such as mine. The fresh created persistent volumes can be found here. I can show that to you later. Storage 5 GB should be safe for all the logs, configs, etc. Let's go ahead and apply that. Then we can go ahead and create the actual deployment, which will use that persistent volume that we just created. One important thing about this YAML is the mount path, which is /config. You want to mount the persistent volume here to ensure that all the configurations last through boots and pod restarts. Let's go ahead and apply that. So now we should have some stuff here. All right, it's running. So we don't have any service, so we currently cannot access this Home Assistant. We're going to start by creating a load balancer service type, which is really simple. I don't have enough knowledge about how ServiceLB actually works, but you can read here. I don't feel comfortable trying to explain it in my words, but there's good documentation and perhaps your brain can understand it better than mine. Anyways, I'm going to create the load balancer service type. In a sense, K3s provides a load balancer known as ServiceLB that will use available host ports to expose it outside of the cluster. Let's go ahead and apply this. So now we have external IP and this port which will be exposed outside the cluster, and then it will redirect the data to this part of the pod. So we should be able to connect here right now. Let's go ahead and try. We are able to access Home Assistant right now, and then we can go ahead and initialize it. I'm just gonna put some easy raspy. Let's go. Finland, well, whatever. Here we go. So now we're able to access Home Assistant by using service type load balancer. We also have persistent volume, which will store all the configuration data. So now if we create something in the Home Assistant, it should all store that configuration data in the persistent volume and exist through pod restarts. I can go ahead and show that to you. Switch this up a little bit, remove some of those. All right, then we can go ahead and delete these current areas. I myself use Home Assistant mostly for my hue lights, so I'm just gonna create lights. Let's go ahead. Yeah, that'll be enough to show. We edited the homepage a little bit and created a new area and deleted the default ones. All right. So now it has created a new pod and destroyed the old one. And as you can see, all the data persisted. All right, then we can go ahead and use ClusterIP service type with an ingress. This is preferred method for me because I like the fact that my services have a DNS name. And for the DNS name, we're going to use nip.io, which allows DNS mapping without editing etc. hosts files. Anyway, let's go ahead and delete the existing service. So now we shouldn't be able to access Home Assistant anymore. Yep, it's down. Then we can go ahead and create the new service, which in this case will be type ClusterIP. There's no other difference to the previous service other than the type. So ClusterIP will expose it within the cluster, whereas Ingress will handle the LAN-wide exposing, so I can access it through my Chrome. Here we go. Now we can access it within the cluster, but it's not exposed outside the cluster currently. That's why we're gonna have to create the ingress. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you want your Home Assistant or other services to have TLS certificate, you're gonna have to watch my previous video. But if you don't, you can just go ahead and delete all of these. It doesn't matter. It's only for my TLS certification. So I'm gonna keep them, but you can go ahead and delete those if you don't have cert-manager installed. Let me explain this a little bit. We're gonna use Ingress class name Traefik, which is K3s default Ingress Contoller. And like I mentioned, the host name will use nip.io to allow DNS mapping without editing etc. hosts. And make sure to change the path type to prefix rather than leave it to exact, which it usually will be by default. Let's go ahead and apply this ingress. So now we have this ingress, but we will run into some issues with Home Assistant while using reverse proxy. As now, between Home Assistant and the cluster, there will be this reverse proxy, which Home Assistant do not yet trust. So we're going to have to add the bot's IP as trusted proxy in the Home Assistant configuration.yaml. All right, let's see if we try to access it right now. We're going to get a 400 bad requests. Let's go ahead and exec into the pod and check out some of the logs. And here you can see in the Home Assistant log, there's an error. A request from a reverse proxy was received. The pod IP, but your HTTP integration is not set up for reverse proxies. So it basically does not trust the reverse proxy right now. Here we have some help with the configuration. HTTP, we're gonna have to add this one. And because we're running this, we need to also add trusted proxies. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm just gonna copy paste it here. All right, use X forwarded for true. And when we have used that, we must include trusted proxies. And with trusted proxies, we're gonna make it trust the K3s default pod CIDR. Let's go ahead and restart the deployment. All right, everything is running again. 11 seconds ago. ClusterIP service. Let's get the ingress. So we're gonna wanna connect here right now and check the status. Here we go, we can access it, raspi. And we should only have our one area. Yep, lights. All right, login failed. Yep, here we go. The data seems to persist through pod restarts. And I also wanted to show you how the persistent volume gets created from the node's local path. And that will be created here. Let's go. Oh yeah. And here we will have the persistent volume of my Home Assistant and the same files as we had when we executed ourselves inside the pod. Okay, we can check the configuration.yaml. So here's the few lines that I added to make it trust our pod CIDR. All right, I think that settles it. Now we have all running nicely, and they will survive any pod restarts or Raspberry Pi reboots. And if you're more interested in TLS certificating your deployments, go ahead and check my other videos so you can also have automatic TLS certs like I do. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.